Your mind is doing it again. The same thought running on repeat right now. You've tried to slow this down before and it didn't last more than a few days. You know this loop isn't helping you. You know staying in it won't change anything. But knowing that hasn't been enough to stop it. And that gap is the whole point. That gap between what you know and what you keep doing is exactly what Buddhism mapped out. Today we'll look at why repeated thoughts become the beliefs you live your whole life by. Because the thoughts you keep repeating aren't just noise inside your head. They become the story you tell yourself about who you are and what's possible for you. The Buddha didn't just teach kindness and compassion and letting go. He taught something far more specific than that. He taught that the mind, left unwatched, will construct your entire reality for you. And it will use your own repeated thoughts as the raw material. There's a teaching from the Dhammapada, one of the oldest surviving Buddhist texts, and it opens with this. Mind is the forerunner of all actions. If one speaks or acts with an impure mind, suffering follows like a wheel follows the hoof of an ox. Most people read that and think it's about being a good person, but it's describing a mechanism. It's describing exactly how a thought, repeated enough times, stops being a thought and starts feeling like a fact about the world. And that shift from thought to fact is where most suffering quietly begins. You've had thousands of thoughts today. Most of them came and went without leaving any mark. You thought about what to eat. You thought about something you saw on your phone. You thought about a task you needed to get to. Those thoughts moved through, and then they were gone. But some thoughts you've had before. You had them yesterday, and the day before, and last week, and the week before that. Those are the thoughts we're talking about today. The ones that feel familiar. The ones you almost don't notice anymore because they show up so often. They've started to blend into the background of your life. I'm not really cut out for this kind of thing. Things never quite work out the way I want them to. I always end up right back where I started. Sound familiar? Here's the thing about those thoughts. They didn't start out as beliefs. They started out as reactions. Something happened. You felt something. A thought formed in response. But then instead of letting it pass the way most thoughts do, you held on to it. You turned it over. You thought about it again that night, and again the next morning. And slowly, without any dramatic turning point, that thought became the lens through which you started interpreting everything else. Buddhism has a word for this process, papanka. Mental proliferation. It's the mind's tendency to take one thought, one moment, one experience, and build an entire story around it. One rejection becomes, I'm not lovable. One failure becomes, I'm not someone who succeeds. One relationship that fell apart becomes, this is just how love goes for me. That's not your reality. That's a story your mind built and kept telling itself so many times that it stopped feeling like a story and started feeling like just how things are. Most of the time, you're not dealing with reality. You're dealing with the version of reality your mind assembled from the thoughts it chose to keep coming back to. And seeing that distinction, even once, is the beginning of something genuinely different in how you see and understand yourself. Now here's what makes this so hard to catch. It doesn't feel like you're building a belief. It just feels like you're being realistic, like you're processing your life honestly, like you're the kind of person who sees things clearly. Buddhism has a specific word for this particular kind of not seeing, avijja, often translated as ignorance. But not ignorance like stupidity or carelessness. Avijja means a fundamental blind spot, not being able to see what the mind is doing, right beneath the surface of your ordinary thoughts. It's the difference between driving through fog and knowing you're in it, versus driving through it and thinking the road ahead is perfectly clear. The Buddha spent years not reading texts, not talking to scholars, sitting directly with his own mind, watching how it moved, watching what it returned to, watching the gap between what was actually happening and how his mind chose to interpret it. And what he found wasn't something mystical or supernatural. It was completely ordinary. The mind left to itself loops. It returns to familiar territory, especially where there's emotional weight. The moments that hurt, the conclusions that stuck. Think about it this way. Imagine someone played the same song quietly in the background of your house every single day. After a few months, you'd stop hearing it as a song. You'd just feel it. It would become the atmosphere of the room, present everywhere, noticed nowhere. That's what repeated thoughts do to your sense of yourself. They stop feeling like things you're choosing to think and start feeling like things that are simply true about you. I'm just an anxious person. I'm just someone who doesn't catch a break. This is just how things go for me. Those sentences don't feel like thoughts anymore. They feel like facts, but they're not facts. They're songs you've been playing for so long, you forgot you were the one who pressed play. A fact you cannot change, but a song you can stop. You can't think your way out of a fixed reality, but you can catch yourself mid-repetition, and that catching, that small, quiet act of noticing, is where things actually begin to shift. Most people hear the word Samsara and think it means reincarnation, coming back lifetime after lifetime in an endless cycle. And in some Buddhist traditions, yes, it does include that. But at its most immediate, most practical level, Samsara is the loop you're already in, right now, this week, this year. It's waking up with the same inner voice that was there yesterday and finding it interpreting every new situation through the exact same old filters. You meet someone new, and within minutes, the old story kicks in. They're going to disappoint me eventually. Something good starts to happen, and the old voice arrives right on schedule. Don't get too excited. Things like this don't last for you. You start something you care about, and somewhere in the middle, right where it requires real effort, the familiar thought shows up. See? This is the part where it doesn't work out for me. A new year begins. You feel something open, something possible. You make some changes. You feel momentum. And then, a few weeks in, right back. Same doubts, same voice, same conclusion. That's samsara. Not a cosmic punishment. Not evidence you're more broken than other people. Just the default setting of a mind that hasn't been examined. The Buddha's entire path of awakening wasn't about escaping the world or reaching some elevated state above ordinary human feeling. It was about stepping out of the loop, not by force, not by willpower, not by replacing one obsessive thought with another, but through awareness, through seeing the loop clearly enough, calmly enough, that you stop mistaking it for reality. He called this liberation, and he was very clear that it isn't reserved for monks or those who spent decades in meditation. It's available in small, real ways to anyone willing to honestly look at their own mind with patience. Here's something Buddhism points to that. Almost every other conversation about the mind misses. There is a gap between the moment a thought appears and the moment you decide it's true. That gap is tiny. Sometimes it feels completely invisible, but it's there. And inside that gap, that fraction of a moment, is where real freedom lives. The Zen tradition describes this with a simple image. The mind is like the sky. Thoughts are like clouds. You are not the cloud. You are the sky that the cloud passes through. A cloud doesn't define the sky. It moves through. It shifts. And eventually, without you doing anything, it's gone. But most of us have spent so many years identifying with the clouds that we've forgotten what it feels like to be the sky. Every anxious thought becomes, that's me, that's who I am. Every self-critical voice becomes, that's the truth about me. Every dark prediction about the future becomes, that must be right. It came from inside me. This is what Buddhism means by mistaken identification. Not a philosophical problem, a very practical, everyday one. You've been treating the content of your mind as the report card of your life. And so when the same thought keeps showing up, the mind assumes it must be telling you something true. Here's the practice Buddhism offers for this. Not to destroy the thoughts, not to fight them or override them with better sounding ones, but to watch them, to step into the position of the sky, even for a brief moment, and observe the cloud moving through. There's that thought again. Not that thought is true and I need to deal with it right now. Not I need to make that thought go away immediately. Just there it is. I've seen that one before. This is what mindfulness actually means at its core. Not a breathing exercise. Not a wellness trend you pick up for 2 weeks. Sati, the Pali word the Buddha used, means remembering to look. Remembering to notice what the mind is doing before it convinces you the story it's spinning is the whole truth. It's catching yourself mid-repetition, and instead of automatically continuing, pausing. Not to judge the thought, just to see it with enough clarity that it doesn't pull you all the way in. A thought you can observe clearly has less power than a thought you're living completely inside. That's not a metaphor. That's the actual mechanism of how this works. You might be wondering, if repeated thoughts cause suffering, why do we keep going back to them? Why do we replay the same conversation that happened 2 years ago? Why do we wake up in the middle of the night with the same worry we had last week? Why, when we try to let something go, does it just keep showing back up? Buddhism has a clear answer to this. The mind goes back to what it knows, even when what it knows is painful. The Sanskrit word is vasana, mental impressions. Think of grooves worn into a wooden floor by years and years of foot traffic, walking the same path. The more you walk that path, the deeper the groove. The deeper the groove, the more automatically your foot finds it. Not because you're choosing it consciously, because it's the path your feet have learned. It's familiar. It's the path of least resistance. And the mind, especially when it's tired or stressed or overwhelmed, finds the deepest grooves. That's what the mind does. It looks for patterns. It follows the path it already knows. It returns to familiar territory. This isn't weakness. This isn't a character flaw that separates you from people who seem to have it figured out. It's simply how the human mind is structured, and understanding that matters. Not so you can excuse the loop, but so you can stop being surprised and ashamed every time it appears. The loop isn't evidence that something is wrong with you. It's evidence that you're human. The thoughts you keep repeating aren't necessarily true. They're just well worn. They're the grooves your mind has walked so many times that finding them again feels automatic, feels natural, feels like arriving home. But here's the thing about grooves worn into a floor. You can't sand them smooth overnight, but you can stop walking them. And slowly, with patience, with consistent redirection, new paths form. The old grooves don't vanish. They just stop being the ones you're in. The Buddha understood this through years of direct observation of his own mind. Modern neuroscience has confirmed the same principle. The brain is not fixed. Patterns are not permanent. They only feel permanent when you're standing inside them and can't see where they end. Permanence and familiarity are not the same thing. And the moment you genuinely understand that, something genuinely important inside you begins to loosen. And slowly, it starts to move. Buddhism doesn't stop at the diagnosis. It never does. Every teaching, every insight, it always offers a direction. The Buddha said, "Your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own unguarded thoughts." That's not a warning to fear your mind. It's an invitation to finally pay attention to it. In the Pali texts, the Buddha speaks often about a practice called yoniso manasikara, wise attention. The practice of deliberately choosing where you direct your mental energy, not forcing yourself to feel cheerful when you don't, not pretending difficult things aren't difficult, not bypassing the hard stuff by reaching for pleasant thoughts, but asking honestly, which of these thoughts actually deserve another visit from me today? And which have I been returning to purely out of habit? Not because they're useful, not because they're helping, just because the groove is there and my mind keeps finding it. Think about a garden. Every mind is a garden. Whatever you water grows. Not because you especially wanted it to, just because consistent attention is what makes things grow. Whatever you stop watering fades over time. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, consistently over days and weeks. It loses its grip on the space. You haven't been feeding the painful thoughts on purpose. Nobody did. You've been watering them automatically, the way you'd water a plant that's always been on the windowsill, without stopping to ask whether it still belongs there. Wise attention is the practice of pausing at the windowsill and asking that question honestly. Not every thought needs a second visit today. Not every worry has earned another hour of your mental energy. Not every self-critical voice has built a case strong enough to deserve a permanent platform inside you. And here's what this doesn't mean, because this part matters. It doesn't mean suppression. It doesn't mean forcing your mind to only allow approved thoughts. It doesn't mean pretending the hard stuff isn't there. It means meeting the thought fully, seeing it clearly, acknowledging that it's there, and then consciously, deliberately, without drama, choosing not to water it again today, the way you'd open your hand to let something go, not by forcing your fingers open, just by choosing gently to stop holding on. Over time, and it is over time, not overnight, the thoughts you stop feeding do get quieter. They don't disappear, but they lose their urgency. They lose the automatic authority they once had over how the rest of your day felt. And the thoughts you return to with honesty, with patience, without pressure, those start to carry more weight. Not because you perform some mindset trick, but because you use the same mechanism. Repetition only, this time with intention behind it. That's not a trick. That's the oldest tool the mind has used. Wisely. Finally. This is the hardest part, and probably the most important thing in this entire video. The belief you've been living by. the one underneath the daily noise, the one running like a quiet hum beneath everything else. The belief that says you're not enough, or that you'll always be just a little behind, or that peace is something other people get to have and you're still working toward. That belief was not handed to you as a fact about the world. It was built, thought by thought, repetition by repetition, often starting in moments when you were very young, or overwhelmed, or moving through something you didn't have the tools to fully understand. Your mind doing what minds do, trying to make meaning out of pain, landed on a conclusion, and then kept returning to that conclusion whenever something similar appeared, until the conclusion stopped feeling like a conclusion, until it stopped feeling like a thought at all, until it just felt like, this is who I am, this is what's real, this is how things go for me. Buddhism calls this entire experience dukkha, often translated simply as suffering, but more precisely, a persistent sense of unsettledness, a feeling that something is always slightly off, that even good moments don't quite land, that you're carrying something you can't fully put down. And what the Buddha pointed to, again and again, across decades of teaching, is that this unsettledness isn't a feature of reality. It's a feature of a mind that keeps returning to the same painful conclusions and treating them as the final word on what's possible. The belief you're carrying is not the truth about you. It is the most repeated thought you've had about yourself. Those two things are not the same, and the distance between them, that's the space where something real can change. Not later, not when circumstances are finally different. Right now, in the mind you already have, you can stop repeating it. Not in one conversation, not through a single moment of insight, not by willpower alone, because willpower gets tired, but through something quieter and more consistent, through awareness catching the thought a little earlier each time it appears, through restraint choosing not to add another layer today when the old story shows up, through honest inquiry asking without forcing an answer. Is this actually true? Or is this just something I've said to myself so many times it now feels like truth? That question, asked with real curiosity rather than desperation, is how something genuinely begins to loosen. The Buddha didn't promise this would be quick. He taught a path, not a shortcut, not a single formula, a direction you can orient toward in ordinary moments, on ordinary days, and find that slowly, consistently, the heaviness that felt permanent was actually movable. That the thought you believed for years was actually a thought. And thoughts, unlike fixed facts, can change. So here's what we've covered today. The thoughts you repeat become the beliefs you live by. Not because they're true, but because the mind treats repetition as evidence of truth. Buddhism understood this long before modern science put a name to it. The loop of suffering isn't something happening to you from the outside. It's something the mind builds, quietly, automatically, from the inside, using your own thoughts as the material. And the path out isn't to fight the loop or force yourself into a different one. It's awareness, catching what you keep repeating, finding the gap, however small, between the thought and the belief it's trying to build. Choosing, slowly and honestly, not to keep watering what isn't helping you grow. You are not the most repeated thought in your head. You are the awareness that can watch that thought and moment by moment choose differently. The Buddha didn't say this would be easy. He said it was the most real work a person could do. And somewhere in you, and the part that stayed with this all the way to the end. I think you already know that's true. If this landed for you today, consider subscribing. This channel exists for exactly this. Buddhist wisdom for the ordinary moments of your life. Not as philosophy to study, but as something you can genuinely use starting tomorrow. We'll see you in the next one. And if you're not fully there yet, that's okay. The path doesn't require perfection. It only asks that you keep showing up and looking at yourself honestly.